Hello and welcome to the 3,500 Miles Between Us podcast with your hosts Jobie and Abigail. Hello.
Hey.
Soggy Halifax, where are you?
And I'm in sunny Mexico. We're coming to you live from across the world.
So, what part of Mexico?
I'm in Santa Cruz, which is Puerto Vallarta side of Mexico. Puerto Vallarta is the big closest city. And yeah, so our neighbor down the road who sells us hay, which is fuddy-duddy farmer who you wouldn't expect to be even very kind. You know, you just kind of talk to people and they open up, and he took a shine to Gabriel like everyone does, my son. And yeah, he said, "Oh, we got a condo down in Mexico if you want to go there."
That's wicked.
Pretty, and he's got, so yeah, it's a bit of an older clientele here that own the condos. Like the swimming pool, you go down to the pool and it's like all old people, and they look at us, you know, jumping in and throwing the football and kind of roll their eyes a bit, but it's not as touristy in the neighborhood. In Santa Cruz, I mean, there's a big marina close by, and there's like a four-wheeler in the basement that we're allowed to use that he has here, so we can rip around town. We got like this tiny little four-wheeler, like a quad.
Oh, excellent.
Me, Tara, Gabe, and Amelia crammed on it, ripping down the streets. So dangerous. No helmets, flip-flops and shorts. And, and the roads are so bumpy.
Really?
Yeah.
Even worse than Canada. How's that possible?
Well, you have it worse than us because of your frost, I think. Your cold weather. Like, we don't have actually terrible bad roads, but I know you're pothole central there.
So I'm always curious, especially as we're both immigrants in Canada, when you go to Mexico or abroad, are you thinking in the back of your head ever, could I live here?
You know, it's funny because there's been so many emotions. I guess having the podcast, you think, okay, we're going to talk. And so you're a bit more, I don't know if you find this, but I'm a bit more aware of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling about a given situation. Because I thought, oh, this could be interesting to talk about. So you kind of, I think you're a bit more heightened, like third person looking at your brain. But the funny thing coming here is that Canada and Mexico have this affinity at the moment because of the tariffs.
Yeah.
So they were saying, someone said right before we left, "Oh, make sure you wear a Canadian hat or something because they're going to love you down there."
Right.
And I didn't even think about it. And I thought, oh, yeah, there's this connection we have with down here because we're both getting marginalized by the U.S. and the whole tariffs malarkey.
But also before that, I think there's a lot of people emigrating to Mexico from Canada, would you say? Or you hear a lot of talk about it. I don't know how much it's actually happening.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's what they call them expats. Yeah, I mean, in this town, there's just tons of American talking Canadian, you know, folks that snowbird here and spend half their life down here. But
so what do you think, you know, because life's been such a struggle in Canada over the last few years, when you're there, do you think, could I do this?
Oh, 100%.
You could do it?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, as a family, we're always talking about, like, Gabe's like, you know, there's a place over there for sale. And so we've already had a couple of really crazy adventures that could have gone really pear-shaped. We've only been here 4 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's sketchy.
Well, no, it's not sketchy until it is sketchy because we rented a car, and so we, you know, Tara and I both like doing things that aren't very touristy. We like going to the local places, and so we go out of the little town that we're at, and we tried to find this beach day before yesterday, and we are not using our data because on our phones because it's so expensive. So Tara's just kind of using this hiking app. So it's like reading a map. It doesn't show where you are exactly. You just have to constantly follow it like a map.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you know
Yeah.
where you've left, and you're okay, past that street, so we're about here on the
Right.
map. So we tried to find this really long beach that people have been talking about, and we went off the beaten trail, and then we're in just a little four-cylinder, four-door Hyundai, like a
Mm.
tiny little rice burner car, and then we're off like down this dirt track, and it's really, really bumpy, and I'm like, oh man, this is like full-on 4x4ing. And the further we went, the further we realized that we're the only quote unquote white folks out here. Like it's all locals.
Right.
And then we take a hike way down to the beach, this beach. And it turns out that it wasn't the beach we were looking for, but it was like pretty insane 4x4ing in a 2-wheel drive car and then hiking down. And all the while, I mean, I don't know if you've traveled with, I don't know how you feel about traveling with kids, but every time I do it, I think it's the worst idea ever.
Really.
Well, it depends on your children, right? But Amelia, my daughter, who's 13, how old is she? 14. She's at that age where mom and dad aren't cool anymore. I just want to be on my phone.
Oh no.
Sort of. Whereas Gabriel is like full on adventure, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
awesome. You know, like last night, he's like, thanks, mom and dad, for bringing us here. This is the best time. You know, and all he wants to do is pull over. He's really into plants. So he wants to pull over and propagate trees. We're not allowed
That's
to bring stuff
awesome.
back. So we're going to be smuggling all kinds.
Yeah.
Like we took off mango snips yesterday off a tree, and
Mm.
he's off in the bushes hacking stuff and getting seeds. And
That's so cool.
but Amelia is like, oh man, I remember taking my older kids to Maui, and there was these like humpback whales that were breaching, you know, about 200 feet off the beach or something.
I remember those photos, and the kids were just not impressed, were they?
They were
Or were...
playing back then. It was Nintendo, you know, those little Nintendo things.
Yeah.
And I remember I was younger and way more feisty, and I just lost it. I'm like, because I knew how much it cost me to get them there,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this is, you know, and it's, I remember being a child like that too, when mom and dad would take me to France and be like, we're going to go out to eat, and I would just want fish and chips because I didn't want anything local.
Right.
And I remember feeling so grumpy, and I remember how it stressed Dad out, and I understand now how
Mm.
frustrated he was, and I don't know why I was grumpy. I don't know why I was like, even in the south of France, it was so kind of like tense with me and Dad down there.
Well, it was pretty much tense everywhere, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was. I think it was. There was an expectation. I think in my situation, traveling with with mom and dad, was that Dad turned into someone different on holiday. He was really happy and
Right.
joyful, and I couldn't switch that quickly. And I think he wanted us to. I don't know. I don't know. I'm
Mm.
just at like, off the top of my head, I feel like it's like he wanted me to switch with him. Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you? And
Right.
I couldn't do that. I was like, it's the same struggle I have when we go out for dinner or out to a party and Tara drinks a bit too much, and
Mm.
she turns into someone different, and I'm the sober, and I can't.
You can't change gears
I'm
like
like,
that.
this isn't really you,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to change that quickly, and so I don't know if that's the same as what Amelia's feeling. I feel Amelia has always struggled with change. Like she doesn't like unpredictability.
Right.
Um, and so,
So,
yeah,
and that is such an awkward age as well, 13. And I really noticed that between 13 and 15, my teenage girls is probably the most difficult, moody patch where they have an increase in negative emotion, and you just don't know when. I mean, we talked about this last time. It's a huge transition, especially for girls. I think there's a huge spike in negative emotion that they're trying to deal with, and
yeah,
it's not necessarily pleasant to be around.
it's horrible, especially
Mm.
when you forked out money, you know, and it's like this. I
They're
think
so
that's like
ungrateful.
Tara and I have both done the all-inclusive thing before, and it makes so much sense when you have kids.
I've never done an all inclusive ever, and I think I can't relate to a lot of what you're saying is because it's so rare for us to go away.
Yeah.
You know, it's I just haven't been away because I've got the business that I'm running, and you know, it's a lot of money to just step on a plane. So people tell me that all inclusives is the answer when you've got children because everyone's happy, and it makes complete sense to me that that stage of life it would be perfect for.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never done it.
Yeah, it's, I didn't understand it till I took Raven, and then I took him for his 18th because I promised him we'd go, and just two of us went.
Mm,
And I thought this is the tackiest holiday experience ever. But we never argued one time because when you don't have a whole lot of money and you're doing things that are kind of you're punching a little over your weight as far as like I can't really afford this holiday, but we're
mm,
doing it. And
yeah.
then you go out to dinner and your kids don't finish all of their food, it
Mm,
grates on you. I
yeah.
think maybe if you're like loaded, you're like you don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you go to an all inclusive, and it's like I don't care if you finish your food.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter because we've already paid for it. So you've already done the hard thing and parted with the money before you've gone. And then
Mm,
when you get there, you're not really digging into your wallet except for $1 tips.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Makes complete sense.
it totally does. But then you've got a personality like Gabriel, and he loved it at the all inclusive, but he also equally loved the cultural. Like Gabe's the kind of guy that will go down to the marina and he'll go and start talking to the fishermen.
Yeah.
Like he is like a miniature me.
He's an extreme extrovert. I
Yeah,
think.
and he's really interested in like yesterday. So yesterday we it felt like the adventure we went on yesterday could have gone really pear shaped.
Mm,
So we decided to drive an hour and a half out of town because Tara found on some obscure tourist thing that there's these. They're not Mayan. Like there's a lot of Mayan temples here, but they're
mm,
another type of so they're about 1,000 years plus old carvings in rocks, and you can go out. It's a big long hike, and you go and find these carvings that have been done by like a pre-Mayan culture.
mm,
So we drive, and the further out of town we get, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Mexico doesn't feel like that far away from us,
mm.
but holy smoke, some of these villages are like, I can't help but look over there. I kept saying, imagine living there, kids. Imagine living there. I mean,
So they're
literally just a concrete block, square box house with no paint on the inside. So your walls are just concrete blocks
wow.
and pieces of fabric in the windows. Very much like when I went to Venezuela.
Mm. So
And
no glass.
barely any glass, just bars on the windows.
Oh wow.
And no like manicured lawns, anything, like super super dry, very dusty.
Mm.
And you see young girls like walking around, right? And you kind of think,
Mm.
I can't help but imagine what it's like I was saying to Amelia, imagine like there, like you'd have no like dance or going to the mall. I mean, it's like, yeah, you might take trips into the big city, but like really
Right.
third world type of conditions.
Wow.
um, And for me, I kept seeing these unbuilt properties. So they were like half built and then just left for the weeds to grow in it. And it drove me crazy. Like, I don't know if you feel like this unorderliness is like
Mm-hmm.
super draining. I was
Yep.
like, I just want to finish everyone's project here. I can't handle looking at this half finished house. And I
And you wonder
literally,
what happened. Is it
yeah.
someone who's moved
Yeah, my
down there?
mind starts going off. I'm like, what happened here? I'm fascinated by, like, to me, if I went on holiday with just myself, or maybe even I would just want to go to some farmer's place and just help him fix his tractor and work in the field. Like
Yeah.
I
That's a
love getting,
vacation for you.
yeah, like beneath the surface and like,
Yeah.
like really, I don't think everyone, maybe not everyone thinks like that. I don't know,
No,
but
definitely not.
yeah, some people just drive past that and say, oh, that's kind of cool. But my brain goes way down the garden path. Like
Yeah.
I can see myself finishing this property for them.
And what
And
would I do with it?
yeah, and constantly I'm like, we could buy that, kids. We could buy that, and and so we're going way out, and then so Tara's turning. I think we go left here. I think we go right here, and then the road is starting to get like dirt, and then it's just
Mm.
cobbles with massive potholes, because when the rainy season comes here, I think it really wreaks
Right.
havoc on the roads. And so we end up, and then she goes, it's right here. And I'm looking, I'm like, there is nothing here. It's just cows and barbed wire, and there's no path. And so I'm like, great, and Amelia's starting to get a bit antsy, like, oh, but we're lost, and every so often a guy will pass by, and it's a total local, like on a motorbike, or, no one speaks a stitch of English. Thankfully, Tara speaks broken Spanish. I'm so thankful for that, because we would have been totally fucked last night. And then so we drive up to this little four-way, and there's like a store, which is like a bunch of corrugated iron kind of leaning up against a tree, with a guy in there with a refrigerator that sells beer.
Yeah.
And you see they drink a lot of booze out here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this farmer just pulled in with his truck, and there was about 7 people in his truck, and they just went and got a whole bunch of beer, got back in the truck, and drove off. And I'm like, Tara, go and ask. And so we go in there and ask, and luck would have it, there's the guy that takes you to these Mayan rocks sitting in there having a drink.
Brilliant.
And there's only 3 people in this little shack, right? And there's only about 3 or 4 houses in that little intersection. And so he jumps in the car with us, this really old guy, like I think he was probably close to 80, super fit for his age, just a farmer, didn't speak any English whatsoever.
Yeah.
He got in a farm truck actually and drove. He says, meet me down the road. I'll be waiting on the side of the road. That's what we could kind of figure out by hand signals. So we drive down, and he's standing there, and we get out of the car, and he's like, do you want to walk or drive? Tara kind of figured that part. I was like, no, you jump in with us. And so we start driving, and it's like a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes of like the most crazy farm road. Like,
and you're already an hour in. So from where your accommodation is, you're already quite a ways.
We're an hour and a half drive. Yeah, maybe 2 hours drive. And then we're going off into the jungle, down this road that is so steep and bumpy. I'm like, I hope we can get out of here. Wow. And I'll have a little 2-wheel drive, like tiny little streetcar, city car. And he's just sitting there, and he goes, and every so often I have to get out and move a rock out the way so I can get around it. And then we show up in the middle of nowhere, and there's a little shack out here, like a little house. I'm like, how the hell did they bring building materials out here? And so we get out of the car, and then so I'm like saying to Tara, I'm like, if we hadn't offered to drive, that would have been a 2.5 hour walk just to get to the trailhead.
Yeah, isn't that nuts?
Yeah, and this guy was quite happy to do it. So then we start hiking through the forest, and then all the way along the forest, he keeps stopping us and saying, look at this rock. And you look at the rock, and it's covered in these like hand chiseled pictures of like the sun and clouds. It obviously was like they were like talking to God, what they saw as God, to bring rain for their crops. And Gabe was fascinated by it, like, and sometimes he said, I think he interpreted one of them as though it looked like children had done it, because their chisel of a man was like really funny and blocky, and so we were just trying to pick up the pieces of how it seemed like there was maybe a fortress out or some kind of temple. He said that there was a meteor further up on the mountain, a tiny meteor that's only the size of a soccer ball, but he didn't want to go up there because it was too steep. And maybe there was an earthquake or something disrupted all of these rocks and kind of spread them all over the place. Or a meteor, I don't know.
So overall worth the adventure?
Yeah, I mean, we got to this big pool at the end, and then I stripped off and went for a swim, and we all got in there because it was boiling hot, and yeah, and then we came back and then dropped him off, and we said and then Tara found this other place which was natural hot springs, and he said, yeah, go down that road, like in his Spanish, like go down that road and just keep going and you'll get to these hot springs. It was mental. Like it was, I think, 2 hours of the most bumpy, crazy, dusty, twisty, turny
Wow. Really
road.
slow going then.
Oh, it was so bumpy, and like we thought, Tara kept saying, "I think we're going the right way," and I was starting to get a bit like,
Mm,
we're going further and further into the middle of nowhere.
wow. At what point do
Um,
you just turn back and go, I think this isn't going to work?
yeah, and
Yeah.
then we got the point of no return. It was like, well, we just keep on going.
Mm,
And we had to drive through riverbeds that were dried up, and it was pretty mental. And then we got to these, in the middle of nowhere, we found these hot springs. It was crazy. Like they have 35 pools that are made out of rock.
no.
And and then Amelia said to me, she's, Dad, we're the only white people here. I'm like,
So there
oh,
were people there.
they were all, well, it turns out it's a Mexican holiday yesterday.
Okay.
And so tons and tons of Mexican families were out there,
Mm,
no tourists whatsoever except for us.
mm,
And you pay them $8, I
mm.
think, and they will fill. So there's all these pipes running down through this place in the middle of the jungle, and there's all these pools that are about, you could stand up and it would be up to your chest.
Mm,
Scattered, 35 of them just scattered right the way down this kind of like crevasse.
mm.
And these guys would just say, okay, we'll give you that pool. And then they just turn the tap on, and this boiling hot water. I mean, I'm talking scalding
Wow.
hot. Like,
On a hot day?
yeah. Well, it was all shaded by trees.
Yeah. Okay.
But we hadn't got there until 5 o'clock because we were so lost. And they close at 6. It says you get for
Oh
one
no.
hour. So they fill this pool up, and all these Mexican families are just looking at us and laughing because they know full well that there's no way we're going to get in that pool for at least 45 minutes because it is
It's
literally,
boiling water.
yeah, you could have a coffee or a cup of tea out of that water and
Wow.
it would be totally like
Yeah.
too hot to touch.
Wow.
But all these families have been in there, so they went in the morning. They filled their tub up. They're massive, and
Right.
some of these pools are big, like like 20 feet long.
Wow.
And the whole family's in there just drinking and partying and listening to music and doing their thing.
How
And they're all
fun.
staring at us and laughing because we can't even put our feet in. It's scolding. And eventually, the people beside us left, and they said in their broken
Mm,
English, like, "You can have our water,"
right.
which they'd been lounging in all day.
Peeing away.
So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, the
Sure.
kids, like, I love that invitation into
Mm.
the culture. And so anyway, I think we've
Certainly
laid it.
not your all-inclusive experience.
No, and it hadn't ended there because then we get out at 6 and the sun's starting to go down
Oh no.
and we have to drive further. And I'm thinking, we must be, in my head, all I'm doing is driving. So it's actually really tiring driving those
Yeah.
roads because you're
Yeah.
constantly negotiating rocks and stones.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't realize that it was like a long way for us to get back to wherever we're at here, La Cruz. It's not
Mm.
called Santa Cruz, it's called La Cruz. Um, so we left at 5. We didn't get back until 9.
Or you left at 6, didn't it
We
close at
left at
6?
6, and we didn't
Yeah.
get back
So
until 9
3
o'clock.
hours. Wow.
Yeah, and we had to go through all of these little villages. And some reason Mexico put speed bumps everywhere, massive speed bumps. So if you don't see them and you hit them,
Wow.
your
You could
engine's
break your
coming out.
car.
Oh my
Wow.
God. And I hit a few without noticing them because there was
Yeah.
so many. I swear we hit about 50 or 60 speed bumps in total last night.
Wow.
Huge ones. And yeah, these villages were crazy. Like one of them that just everyone's on horseback. These cowboys, like full on cowboys with spurs. And
Golly.
I'm like, Tara, we have to ask directions. We're totally lost. And so we'd ask some farmer directions and they didn't speak any English. Yeah, go down here.
Mm.
We'd go down there. Then we'd be lost again. Ask someone else.
Oh,
And
so
then
hard not to get stressed out, especially with
so,
kids.
well, yeah, Amelia's constantly like, how long till we're home? How long till we're home? And Gabe's just kind of, he's a bit of an empath. So he kind of has taken his energy.
Yeah.
But Tara and I travel very well. And so I was doing fine. And Tara was
Mm.
just reading the map and co-pilot, But at about 8 o'clock, we're in this town and there's a lot of traffic and it starts to look like a town that has gangs because there's a lot of graffiti and It's getting dark now, so your mind starts to race a bit. And we go down this road, and Tara's like, turn right here. And we turn right, and we're on a one-way street with all of these cars coming towards us. I'm like, oh my God. They're like, get this car in reverse. I'm like reversing down the road and like pull a U-ey, and then I'm like, okay. And then I snap. I'm like, we're going into that gas station. We are getting to draw directions on a map. And so anyway, 5 or 6 stops later, we finally hit the highway, and it was such a relief. But you kind of felt in the back of your head, this could go pear-shaped.
And isn't it funny that probably the sign of civilization is just like, like a healing waters.
Well, just being on an asphalt road felt like
blessing. So that, I mean, obviously what I said at the beginning, like, could you live there? Could you?
yeah.
You could.
I think so. I mean, Gabe was like the same. He's like, we were out in the middle of nowhere where there was like 3. It reminded me a lot of the kind of reservations I've worked on in Canada. And Gabe's like, oh yeah, we could fix up that old truck, Dad. And Taryn and me are like, not a chance in hell.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, it's clearly not a collective. And the only reason I say that is because you and me have had conversations as immigrants to Canada where when things get tough, and they are extremely difficult in Canada right now, as they are in many places, your mind goes to this. Well, what I do is I have a thought of, would it be easier anywhere else? And if I picture myself there, I want to walk it through in my imagination right to the end. Like, what would it be like for our children? Would they resent us because they couldn't make friends? What, you know, because people right now will say, that's it. You know, like, I'm sure in America, if Trump gets in, I'm leaving. And they said that the last time he got in. And then over here in Canada, they'll say, you know, if Mark Carney gets in, I'm leaving. But people rarely walk that out. You know, it's something that you do out of an emotional reaction because you feel so out of control and so trapped. But when I walk it out in my mind, I can't think of anywhere that would really guarantee that it's good for everyone, because you'd be making a decision for the whole family, and the risks involved, and also the challenges that you'd face elsewhere. Like, I've emigrated to New Zealand without even ever visiting there. We did that wild. 20 odd years ago. And I know exactly how it feels to show up in a country with high hopes. And that was paradise. There is probably
And they speak English there.
They speak English. It's paradise. It's famous for being the most beautiful country in the world. What could go wrong?
Frodo lives there.
Yeah, exactly. It's Middle Earth. And yet, and when we showed up, the way immigration was in those days is they asked when we landed, you know, where are you going to be living? Because we went there with a one-way ticket, which, you know, it's like quite ballsy, and we'd never visited. And we just said camping. So that's literally what was written in the documentation.
Did you have to have a visa to live there?
If you were under 30, you could get an open-ended visa that was also amazingly a work permit as well. That's how, I don't know if that still exists, but with a Commonwealth country, they offered a 1-year work visa that was open to any job. It wasn't specific to a job. You could just work.
Wow.
And they were so you know, easy about the fact that we had no address, and we just wrote camping on the immigration documents. Camping, great. But if you came into that country with a speck of mud on your boot from another country, that would get sterilized. They were absolutely fastidious about no
bringing disease
dirt, anything like that. Dirt was not allowed. You could say you're camping, not a problem, but do not bring a speck of dirt in. Wow. But after 2 years of being there, I know, and then on top of that, moving to New Brunswick, having never visited, and on top of that, 5 years later, moving to Halifax without ever visiting. So I've done that 3 times, had a child in each place, had a child in New Zealand, a child in New Brunswick, and a child in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Having never visited all 3 of those places before moving, I got no romantic notions about what it's like to relocate and take risks and it not
The grass
and it
isn't
not always
greener.
work out. And when I
Yeah, I
say
mean,
not work out, I don't regret any of those experiences, but man, are they challenging. I
so has
don't,
your oldest got a New Zealand passport?
yeah, it's a pain in the ass getting the passports renewed, but she's New
Wow,
Zealander.
that's cool.
And then I've got 2 Canadians and I'm still English.
And
But
did you have medical over there? Like free, is it same as
yeah,
England?
it's
Like,
very similar to England. And we became residents. That was very straightforward and cheap at that
oh,
time. But so when I walk it out in my mind, I know what it's like to create community out of thin air and have to, and you not even know whether you resonate with the people, because that was one of the issues with New Zealand. It was stunning, it was an amazing country, but the people were not
you
my
struggle,
people.
not enough culture you found, right?
Well, I would say people that were my age acted like baby boomers, so that we couldn't have a conversation where I felt I could be myself, because I was 28 when we got there. A fellow 28-year-old New Zealander did not open up, was not, there wasn't a reciprocal energy. It felt like talking to a 70-year-old with
Mm.
their level of just desire to be open. And then
And to touch
Canada,
it.
totally different. Canadians are very open.
Hmm.
Overall, I would say they don't take a lot of initiative, but if you're willing to put yourself out there, they respond very well to, if you're being vulnerable about your life, or just there's an openness there that
Mm.
I never saw in a Kiwi when we were in New Zealand. They didn't
Mm.
have, like, there is something quite special, I think, about Canadians. There's challenges too, but the Canadians are what keep me in Canada, not the climate, not the cost of living, because it's extremely expensive and the economy is a mess. But I do really like Canadian people
Hmm.
overall. I mean,
Hmm.
what's your?
Um, yeah, that's a long question that could lead all kinds of places. I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, I, yeah, this is probably a topic
that's a
for
whole
another
pod.
day. But
Yeah, we
well,
should.
I just feel like since COVID, my whole feeling on people in general has been really jaded
Yeah.
by COVID, and I don't think I've been able to reconcile that.
Mm,
So pre-COVID, I loved Canada, and I loved our friends. We had
mm.
an amazing group of friends, like who we, I remember you coming to our wedding and being amazed by how many
Oh
friends we
yeah,
had,
yeah.
and it was
And how
strong.
tight
Yeah,
everyone
we were
was.
so tight. Fucking
Big.
COVID fucked it all up.
Yeah. You
You
had a
know,
big group of friends.
yeah, huge, and we bragged about how tight we all were and how we'd be friends to the end,
Mm,
and um, like I, yeah, it was a real shock to me how you think you're really healthy and you do all the right things, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a terminal disease. It really shakes people, right? It's like, oh, but I was
mm,
doing everything right. Like our
right.
friendship was all right, and it was all good, and it was all great, and then it got shook, and it actually irreparable damage was done.
Wow.
I
Didn't
think
stand the test. That
didn't
was a
stand the
pretty
test for
hardcore test for
yeah, and
almost everyone.
that's really sad, especially when you're our age and it's hard to make friends.
Yeah.
And we've relocated to a better place that gave us a whole new group of friends and much more hope and much
Mm,
more aligned in our beliefs and our. But it's still not the same, like when you make friends in your 20s and you stay with those friends,
yeah.
the roots are they're just deep. And
There's
when you
no
make,
substitute for history with people who've known you a decade.
yeah,
Once you get that under your belt, you can make a new friend and have a deep connection, but there's no substitute for history where you go, do you remember when we were 25, we went to that festival? And, that
yeah.
you
I mean, you
had
put a
that
plant in the
layering.
ground, right next to an old plant. The old plant's going to way out survive it in a strong wind, right? There's like the roots just simply deeper. You can't speed that process up.
Yeah.
One of the towns we were driving through yesterday, because it was a public holiday, everyone seemed to be just chilling. And I think, and we were driving through this just town of they're just cowboys and really hardworking farmers. And they were just sitting, everyone was sitting outside their house because it's too hot inside, just drinking and talking. And, and I said, Tara, I kind of, there's something that I'm envious about what they have. I know that there's a lot of dysfunction in these communities and probably a lot of like abuse and probably a lot of alcohol but there's something I'm envious of, is like this, oh, here's uncle and here's my cousin and here's a sister, and
Us.
and they just there's this community that lacks, or you don't get that when you travel a lot, or
When you're an immigrant.
when you're an immigrant, or maybe just the value. Like I know for Vancouver, where I live in Vancouver, it's known as the loneliest city in Canada because everyone is head down, ass up. And I know Halifax is much more friendly.
Yeah.
And Vancouver Island is more friendly too. But
Yeah.
some of these cultures, when you travel, like, you go to France, Paris and Italy and even England, like the pubs, that's what I miss about England, is the pubs and you see the same faces there, and they don't have big ambitions to go travel.
No.
But there's also something beautiful about that because, I'm farming my dad's farm.
Yeah, well, I've got. I haven't been back to England for so many years, but a friend of ours goes back regularly, and he says he can walk into his old pub, and the same people are sitting in the same chairs as when he left England a decade ago. Every time he goes back, he knows if he walks into that pub, they'll all be there,
Yeah.
which is wild to me. And and I think as an immigrant, when I meet locals here who've been born and bred, they have no idea how different it feels for me, because for them, when they go downtown, they're literally waving to people constantly and will almost go, yeah, I don't, even my kids, because they're born and bred here, will say, yeah, I don't want to go out because I know I'm going to see a bunch of people I know, and they don't want to see people they know. And I'll say to them, that's a privilege. I haven't got that because I've only been in Halifax 12 years.
Yeah.
And it takes decades to build that level of momentum. And even if that is the case, there won't be ever cousins, grandparents, aunties and uncles. That will take several generations if my children stay here to get those benefits. But we've got a neighbour 2 doors down, and their mother lives round the corner, and all 8 of her grandchildren live within walking distance of her.
Yeah.
So these children that she had all decided to buy homes in the vicinity. And I'll never know what it feels like. Like round our Christmas table, it's all friends, which I love. And that's got its own kind of magic. But that sense of belonging that people have in any space where they've never left is
Yeah.
hugely rich. I envy that.
Yeah. I mean, as young kids, I remember coming back from the States back to Cornwall and going to I was like, I walked into the Safeway and saw school friends working, stacking the shelves,
Yeah.
and inside I was so mocking of it. I was like, oh, you guys have sheltered lives and I'm seeing the world.
Yeah.
But it's not this and it's not that, right? Like we think we've got it figured out, but when you go travel, there's a sacrifice, like mom encouraged us to be independent. And I think the dark side of that is that none of her children are close to her in geographical sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I imagine when I'm driving through these villages, my brain goes into like how it feels to be one of these folks. Like from the outside looking in, you can romanticize it and say, oh, you're on horseback and there's community, but these guys have access to the outside world. So they're all watching television and they're all looking at their cell phones and they're all looking at this crazy outside world. And probably there's a lot of envy and, oh, why can't we have that? And we'll never have, like, the roads are so rough. You can't have a nice car. I mean, you just have to drive a motorcycle or a horse.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's like the human condition. The grass is always greener on the other
Mm,
side, and we think that it's better grass, but it's actually, it's just different grass. Um,
yeah.
I don't, yeah, I don't know what the answer is really.
Mm.
I don't know if there's an answer.
No, I don't know if there is, especially if you were to do something like relocate off your own volition, where you're not getting headhunted and job offered. Like those kind of situations would make it different, because then you're like, I've got this amazing opportunity. They're offering me twice what I earn right now, you know.
Yeah,
But even friends who've gone to Dubai will say, people, it gets this reputation as being everyone's rich, everyone's got a maid, you live in palaces. But also, this one girl who grew up there, who lives here now, she said people will lose that overnight. They will lose a job and everything evaporates, and they lose everything. And I want to kind of interview her actually and get into the weeds about what life in Dubai is like.
yeah,
But why does it's a very rapid turnover, of success and failure there, according to her. She said it's not what you think.
yeah,
Everyone glorifies Dubai and thinks you're all, because it's tax free, but she said there are taxes, like for schooling it's incredibly expensive, and
yeah. Well, I
it's
think
complicated.
we just read the glossy magazine and we make our assumption and on our
Mm,
on our verdict on that, right? And it's yeah, it's not as simple as that. I mean, I think for me, it's like there's adventure personalities that desperately want adventure, and then there's homebodies, right? That just have no, like I sometimes see couples, the couples that you look at the really hot couple on the beach and they're not talking and they're not holding hands, but they're both really attractive, and you kind of look at them, and then you see another couple that maybe aren't so outwardly, what
yeah,
we would call attractive,
yeah,
but they're like completely transfixed with each other, and they're just enjoying each other, and I'm like, sometimes I think they've got it
mm,
and we haven't. Not saying I'm a, do
yeah,
you know what I mean? But like, what we're so allured by shiny things,
yeah,
um, and and sometimes I think that the person that's just satisfied with a little, it's like,
yeah,
no, like you sometimes meet people and like, no, I actually want to work in my dad's shoe shop. I love it, and I love this town.
yeah.
Like Gabe and I were watching. There's this Netflix show. I'd encourage anyone to go watch. It's called The Home Game, and it's about all of these obscure sports, like that are in these different cultures that aren't mainstream sports.
Okay,
like hunting with eagles in Tibet,
right, yeah,
and one of them is in Italy, and it's insane. It's like these little towns like Valencia and all these little towns will have a team, and it's like football, like soccer,
mm,
um, but it's full contact soccer. So it's like soccer and MMA combined,
wow, okay,
bare knuckle, and it's been going on for hundreds of years. And so these guys are working regular day jobs. They get paid nothing to do it, and they're all like in their like mid-20s, early 30s, super fit, work
mm,
out every day for this one cause, and then they have these games, and the different towns will fight each other. So they have a soccer ball, and then the defenders will try and stop the forwards that are trying to get the ball into the goal by beating the shit out of them.
okay, so violent soccer.
Oh yeah, like one guy said the worst accident I had was when my eye fell out into my hand.
Oh my God,
Oh
okay.
yeah, no, you have to watch it. It's insane, and they're just bare knuckle fighting on the floor, beating the shit out of each other. Like one guy said, one guy's like, okay, if you really hurt someone, like one guy had a broken rib, and he's like, no, 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 and you can tap out, and they're not gonna like
Mm,
beat you to death. But the way these guys talked about the honor and privilege to fight to do this sport simply because their fathers did it,
mm,
and simply because they're fighting for their town, like the glory of their town. And these are not
mm,
guys in their 60s and 70s, they're guys in their 20s and 30s, good looking men,
mm.
and you think, and they're not getting paid a penny to do it. and I just look at it and with my son, like my jaw's on the ground. It's like we don't have that. Like
Mm.
I'm so jealous of that. Like these guys, and this one guy had this child who was like 3, and he goes, "I hope one day my son does what I do." And they were looking from high up over their little village with such uh,
Pride.
pride, yeah.
Mm.
And to me, I was mesmerized, but I'm like, yeah, we don't. I don't have that.
Mm.
And I think, like, if you were to play the Canadian national anthem and the British national anthem, the Canadian national anthem does nothing to me.
Mm.
I still resonate with British patriotism.
Yeah.
There's something there, like when something happened in the Royal, like Lady Di died, or
Yeah. Yeah.
all of it, like it moved me almost emotionally. And you can't choose that. That's just
Mm.
either is in you or it's not. Like, you know, when Trump was like, "Let's make Canada the 51st state."
Mm.
I don't care. You
Yeah.
know what I
Well,
mean?
we'd be 60% richer if we did.
We did, yeah. But you tell that to a through and through Canadian,
Yeah. Yeah.
hockey loving Canadian, and they think they're just like,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just cannot fathom that you would even
Mm.
entertain that thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't have that allegiance in a
No.
way, even though Canada's given me a great life and I have a life
And you've
here.
been
And
here how many years? 30?
yeah, since I was 24,
Which is
23.
interesting because you've been here longer than you were in the UK.
Yeah.
I left at 28, and I feel fully Canadianized in many ways because I know that if I moved back, I would have reverse culture shock
Yeah.
in a big way. And I miss the same things that you miss. I think I'm just confused in a way
I know. Because I
because,
wouldn't want to go back to England. You want your cake and you want to eat it too, right?
yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult, I feel as if that it's a difficult culture to survive in, because it's very limiting. And we've talked about before how it can crush your dreams, and you're part of a system, of a class system. And
Mm-hmm.
here in the new world, if you work hard enough, you can be what you want to be. And I think most Canadians probably don't appreciate that when you come from old cultures like ours, you can't transcend your class in England. And
Mm-hmm.
if you say that to a Canadian, they're like, they don't get it, because, and even more so an American, because, you can come from the ghetto in America and then become phenomenally wealthy, and you transcend your origins.
Yeah.
Whereas in England, you can't.
I mean, they
And
pride themselves on those rising from the ashes stories, right?
yeah, whereas in England, you would never break out of that mold, no matter
Mm.
how much money you make, because it's nothing to do with money. And I think people here don't understand it's got nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
But
If you're called Kevin, you are
yeah,
always going to be
you're
a
always going to
Kevin.
be judged by people who aren't in that class of Kevins.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I feel confused, in as much as I understand Canadian life, but I'm still a spectator. I still observe Canadians as a slight outsider,
Mm.
and I probably always will. And yet they don't treat me like an outsider. I don't feel treated differently, but I
Mm.
observe their customs and their way of being, and it doesn't always resonate with me. The hockey culture, I don't understand it. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
resonate with me on any level. And just like what you were talking about joining with America, my thing is, I think we'd probably be better off,
Mm-hmm.
economically. Um, but it's an interesting culture, and is that it's not strong in it. It's a very casual culture, so it's
It's
casual on
very
almost,
young.
yeah, and it's casual on every single layer. How they dress, their attitude to life
I
is
know.
casual.
I mean, Amelia goes to school wearing pajamas.
Oh my god, and fluffy slippers. And
Yeah.
if I took off, you would literally be beaten to death in England if you wore what kids wear as teenagers, when their street cred is of the utmost importance. And I'll go and pick my kids up from high school, and it's like a deluge of grey sweatpants. And then
And slippers.
I'm just drowning in grey sweatpants.
What,
And
it's
then
like pajamas.
yeah, and then on their feet, they'll ram their feet into these fluffy moccasin type
Slides.
sheepskin slides, moccasin, weird, just your street kids going, and they'll pull their white socks up really high. And I am pretty sure you'd not be alive to tell the tale if you
No, you'd
wore
be
that
stoned
in
to
England.
death.
You would
You'd be
be.
stoned.
You wouldn't want to live for the ridicule. But they're so not invested in fashion or trends here. Like, they're still wearing Uggs, they're still wearing sweatpants, they're still wearing fluffy
Yeah, it's
slippers.
like this casual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like comfort. Yeah, there's England. Yeah, you do yourself up when you go out. It's
Oh
like
my God. I
fashion's
think
big.
everything has to go through the filter of, do I look cool?
Mm.
Whereas here, I think it's casual comfort. They don't want to stand out. They want to just blend in with each other. My
Yeah,
kids will say, "Oh, I'll start dressing differently when I leave high school," because they don't want to stand out. But as a culture, it's incredibly casual. Their attitude on every level is, marketing. If they start a new business here, certainly in Nova Scotia, you can tell the foreigners that do really well because they understand the importance of marketing and how to market well.
mm.
Whereas a lot of homegrown businesses here, they won't even bother, and they call their businesses funny names like Gary Can Fix It, or
Oh,
you'll
you
see
see
a
them in
van,
Vancouver. Yeah,
just like they'll do rhymes, so it will
yeah,
rhyme, but it's
terrible.
childish.
I take pictures all the time of trucks and vans in Vancouver and send them to my team because
Really.
I'm so wired for branding and marketing
Yeah.
and cool names. And
Branding
it's like
snob.
nailed it construction
Yeah,
or
yeah,
getting it right construction. So everyone else is getting it wrong.
yeah.
It's
Or
like
they'll use their name, so it will be a rhymey like Paul's Piping Company, or
yeah.
Gary's Garage, Groovy Garage, or something. It's just like,
Yeah.
no, and it will be bubble, like the font will be old school, almost like it was done in the 60s. Like, here we have Happy Harry's flooring and wacky flooring or something. It'd just be really
Yeah.
childlike
Well,
in
in England,
their
the
branding.
mockery and the comedy, right? It's everyday comedy and mockery. You
Mm.
just wouldn't survive it. You wouldn't survive the mocking.
But
Um,
I also, they in England, in highly populated places, your competition is so extreme that you have to be brilliant to stand out. You have to be so innovative in the UK to make it. So if you've got an electrician company, let's say, whatever it is, you have to be really slick in your marketing and your name,
yeah,
all of those things, because else you'll just get drowned out by all the competition.
yeah.
Whereas I kind of feel like here it's not quite the same. Like, that there
It's
isn't
not
a
as well. It's
clambering.
not as sophisticated. Like I mean, the humor, British humor versus Canadian humor is just so much more sophisticated.
Yeah,
Um, you know, it just is.
yeah,
It's more
yeah,
complex. And then I think that um, yeah,
yeah,
there's not that here. It's interesting, right? Because it's like if you were super rich, you can almost have like you can have your house in England, you can have your little house on the beach in Mexico, you can afford to kind of have it all in a way.
yeah,
It's like in soccer season we live in England because we love to
yeah,
watch soccer.
yeah,
And when it's raining, we go to Mexico, and then it's Mardi Gras season in Mexico, so we go and enjoy that. And then ski season in the Alps, and
yeah.
um,
The 1% get to enjoy that.
yeah, there's something
Over.
that's like this compare. Like I envy people who don't. I don't know if people have this and this comparison chip in their brain. Like don't have it. Like just happy with their lot in life. Just happy to. Like we were walking on the beach yesterday, and I was looking up, and there was these private homes that were honestly like fucking hotels. You just couldn't believe that one person, one family could own this thing
Yeah.
on the most beautiful beach you've ever seen.
Wow.
And they look like, and I mean, like the most, like a lot, like infinity pools right on the edge of the cliff, and no one's there.
Yeah.
So you're just like, okay, if that's your holiday home, what the hell
Yeah.
does your home look like?
Yeah.
And I was not looking at it thinking, oh, that's kind of nice. I was looking at it with envy.
Mm.
And I was like feeling shit about my own life,
Yeah.
like, because in actual reality, to have that kind of money probably means that you are traveling all the time.
Mm.
I mean, I'm generalizing, right?
Yeah.
But you don't get that kind of money at no cost.
No.
Like there is a cost, and maybe you've been married 5 times, and you never
Mm.
your wife hates you, and your kids never see you, and I don't know what the story
Mm.
is, but we just look at the glossy cover, and I
Mm.
look at it and think, these poor people in these little farms look at my life and think, oh wow, I've never
Mm.
traveled outside my village in my life, and I probably never will. And this guy's just come here for fun,
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
shits and giggles. And then I look at the rich people and think, oh my God, these guys are flying on private jets and have these amazing homes and get to like never have to worry about how much things cost. And it's the road to misery, isn't it? And it's
Mm.
so true. And sometimes it feels like I'm on the edge of a slippery slide and I can't stop myself going down it. And off I go. And it just makes me feel like dirt.
Yeah.
And then you almost don't want to look at it because it
Mm.
just makes me feel yucky, which is
Yeah.
kind of sad because you can't just look at it for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is when you actually, I think I don't feel that as much just because I've heard too many times of the problems that come with wealth and people wanting to use you and utilize you, and the responsibility of being an employer of all of the staff that run these homes, and all the, the downside. I think another a thing that it reminds me of is the last 3 weeks I've been watching documentaries on musicians, just because you get into them. So 3 weeks ago, me and my middle child, who's really into Amy Winehouse, we watched her documentary that I'd already seen before.
Oh, it's
And
so sad.
so sad. And you're watching it going, sure enough, when the fame really kicked in and the money really kicked in, it coincides with absolute misery. And that Amy Winehouse really just wanted to be a jazz artist that played in jazz clubs. And they often say, "Oh, I never wanted to be famous," and it's hard to believe that that's true because so many people do want to be famous.
Yeah.
But in her case, I like her music, but I've never like listened to her albums much, but I admire the fact that she's a genius and incredibly talented, no doubt. But ultimately that fame destroyed her, and she would have been way better off if she had just done jazz clubs. And she seemed like the type of creative person that didn't want to sing Rehab for 6 years as a hit. She would have sung it for 6 months and then she's done, and then she's writing another song, like she wanted to evolve. And then mainstream wanted her to just sing on late night Jimmy Kimmel and do the
Play the
hits.
hits.
And she just hated
Yeah, she
playing
was like
her
a flower that
hits.
was just dying, right? She was just
Yeah.
like,
Well, what was
yeah.
interesting is then the next week I watched the Avicii story. I'm Tim, which is, Avicii.
Mm,
I don't like his, that was dance music. Wake me up when it's all over. I just don't. I'm not a fan of
mm.
his music, but I'm always so fascinated with their story that
Yeah.
that's what I go in for. And it was the same story of, he got massively famous. He did for several years. He was doing over 250 concerts a year.
Yeah.
So almost like every other night he was performing, doing massive, I don't know if you'd call them concerts because he's a DJ, but he was performing, and it was just this conveyor belt of him being on one plane. And he got really miserable and then like brutally killed himself with a broken wine bottle.
Really?
Yeah, he committed suicide at 31, I believe.
No shit. Didn't
Alone.
he do like lots of like he did one with Chris Martin, right? Like a
Oh yeah, yeah.
song.
That was Sky Full of Stars. Um,
Wow. So recently, I didn't realize
oh,
he
you've got to
died.
watch this documentary. He died quite a few years. I'd say at least 5 years ago. He died. He took a broken wine bottle and slashed his wrist and died alone. Well, obviously
Was
alone.
he in? Was he into drugs?
Yeah, I mean, when you watch his story, basically his only way of coping with that level of fame was to get into painkillers and alcohol, and he got incredibly miserable. And then he just stepped back and retired and had at least 2 years where he was doing the whole pilgrimage, he was getting into yoga, and everyone thought he was doing great. And then he said, I'm just going on vacation, because he would do these pilgrimages alone,
Mm.
where he'd go to, like, Buddhist temples. And he killed himself on one of those trips. I think it was either in Goa or, one of these countries. I think it was an Asian country. His body was found, and he was only 31. And they
God.
were just saying how fragile, very similar to Amy Winehouse, a really fragile guy, extremely sensitive, so acutely artistic. Everyone who worked with him said his gift of melody was just extraordinary. And I could appreciate that, just because even though I don't love his music, you see the artist and you kind of think, yeah, you respect the amount of work that they put into their, as a musician, he never stopped. And it was just on the laptop, right? Because I guess everything was just digital composition.
Yeah.
But then this is the funny thing, and you'll relate to this because I know you've watched it too. Then I watched the documentary about Nickelback.
Yeah. They're just living the life of Riley.
Oh my God. Okay, these guys, and every single song that they played, I didn't like. I was like, don't like that one. Don't like. I've never liked Nickelback because it's such an aggressive voice. It's
Oh yeah.
just Hootie and the
Never made it as a
Blowfish.
poor man
Oh
stealing.
my God. But I was watching it, and do you know what's funny? Having done Amy Winehouse, done Avicii, which you definitely need to see, Nickelback have been touring for 22 years. They're happy as can be. They're the most uncomplex
Yeah.
four guys. There's no depression mentioned. There's
I
no
know.
alcohol, drug addiction.
He had a
Like,
little spat with it. It like didn't last very long, and
and literally, they're like, they never complained about being famous, not once. They never complained about anything. They're just like, we're just living our best life, and we love our fans, and everyone else hates us, but our fans love us, so we don't care. And I was
yeah, they
like,
live up the road from. They live in
oh,
Vancouver.
really? And
Yeah.
it was so funny, because here you've got the previous, like, Amy Winehouse, the tortured souls, Avicii, tortured souls. That's what you expect from
Robbie
any.
Williams.
Yeah, always tortured, drug addiction. Then you've got Nickelback, and they've stuck with their wives, they're happy, they basically adore each other, they love their fans, and they love being famous. Like, there's no complaints. And they're
Yeah,
like,
it's
yeah, we're
like
just going to keep going, man. We love it.
what's the if you did a study on it, what's the element of because they were famous in America too. It's not like they were just famous; they're famous all over the world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They had
yeah,
every reason to have a complex breakdown where they do, oh, so and so got into drugs and we hit the fame just got to us and we just started to get depressed. The classic, you're waiting for that moment and it never comes. They're just happy.
yeah.
I was like, how different. And they are extremely uncomplicated for individuals. Like, none of them seemed very complex.
No, they're very blue collar. I mean,
Yeah,
steel
yeah,
workers and
yeah.
um,
Their
yeah,
biggest drama was that one of them, the lead singer, lost his voice for a month. That was his only drama, and
yeah,
then he seems fine. One of
yeah, and
them got
just
tennis elbow, and then he seems fine. And then the
why
other
just
one had a stroke, but he seems fine.
yeah,
Just like,
that was from the vaccine probably because it was right around then.
oh, okay. But all three of them said, they tried to make it serious. Obviously these three things were kind of serious, but they're
Yeah.
all okay now. And
The guys making the movie are probably like, how do we make this interesting? 'Cause these guys fucking hate. When do
20
we get to
minutes in, I
when
was
do we
like,
get to the
this.
raunchy part?
Well, 20 minutes into the documentary, I thought, this is really dull because they're so straightforward, these guys. Their biggest drama with family is that they had family debt that they needed to make sure they paid off, and that obviously got paid off. Like, there was nothing going. Like, the worst thing, I think, was the fact that all of a sudden everyone started to hate them. But even that didn't depress them. They just said, oh, the rejection was tough, and then we realised, but our fans love us, and that's all that matters. And then that was that. And
Yeah.
people really hate Nickelback a
Oh yeah.
lot.
Well, he took it to heart too, right?
But even then, it didn't get to him to the point where, oh, the band's splitting up, or or I went into a deep depression and I got addicted to drugs.
Well, a lot of these, like Coldplay, for instance, like I'm sure that they're mega famous, and I'm sure that there's all kinds of inside stories of stuff. But I think when you're a lone artist like Amy Winehouse or
Right.
Avicii, it's just you. You're kind of alone with your demons. Whereas carrying the load with a band, I think, is even like look at the Rolling Stones. They're still
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Tons
Yeah.
of dysfunction, but there's this family,
Yeah.
and you're carrying the load together. And I think
Yeah.
like same with Robbie Williams, right? So he's a lone
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah. True.
There is something there, whereas these bands that stayed together, they like held each other accountable almost, and they
Yeah.
almost felt like a
They're brothers.
responsibility. Like, oh, I'm going to fuck the whole band up here. The whole story's going to, if I keep going down this road.
Yeah. And they do become family. And you get the lone wolves where very complex characters as well, like the Robbie Williams, the Amy Winehouse, you name it. These singular singers are
Mm,
typically very complex, sensitive, insecure, addiction problems. It's rough for them to cope
yeah,
with fame as well
yeah,
on their own. Even though they have bands, I mean, they have touring bands, don't they? But they
yeah. But
alone,
like in my little way, I can relate to like running a business, right? If you don't, like people said, well, have you ever thought of having a partner? And I know there's all these stories of partnerships going sour,
mm,
but I've often envied the partnership thing because however much I've got employees that have been with me since the beginning of Little Star, which is like 18 years,
mm,
but they still log off on Friday night,
yeah,
log back on Monday. They understand like, oh, I don't know if we're going to make payroll, but they're not in the trenches to the point. So there's this point where they just log off, and
mm,
it's natural because they're employees.
yeah,
And the loneliness of being an entrepreneur, carrying the burden, like the buck literally stops with me,
yeah,
100%. Like these guys kind of empathize.
yeah,
Even my wife, she doesn't totally get it.
yeah,
And so if you're an artist, like with everybody throwing all of these opportunities at you and all of these like trying to manipulate the direction you go in and advertising and you think everyone's after you for your money. I mean, yeah, I can understand how it must be incredibly isolating and lonely,
mm,
and not having someone to share that with, like the band,
yeah,
to say, "Hey guys, you feeling that too?" Like, holy fuck, man! People like,
yeah,
oh god,
yeah,
I feel like this manager's trying to screw us over. Yeah, I feel that
yeah,
too. Let's fire him. You can
yeah,
do it together,
yeah,
but doing it alone is like really difficult. Like
right.
because then you start playing games in your head. I don't know if I'm thinking the right thing, and
Who can you trust? Because
I
your
mean,
core bandmates you can trust,
did you,
probably.
yeah, did you see that Tom Hanks Elvis Presley movie?
Yes. Oh my
I,
God.
I had no idea. That guy
Yeah.
got totally fucked over by a
Posed. I
manager.
know. And other than his short year in, I think when he was in the army, Elvis
Hawaii.
never no, he he went and did military service for a time.
Yeah, in
Um,
Hawaii,
oh, was it Hawaii?
which is an American state.
He never left. I thought for sure he went to Germany. I feel like he did service abroad. But anyway, even if that's not, he basically was never able to leave America because of this awful manager. And Elvis kept on saying, I want to tour. I want to go abroad. And the guy just kept him on a really short leash
Yeah.
and imprisoned him. And that's another story of a classic tortured soul who ended his life like really awfully. And yeah, that was incredibly well done. Like, man, was that very, very interesting.
I'm watching this iguana outside who's like totally changed his color to green
No
because he's
way.
up against a green tree. Yeah, it's crazy.
But
All
that
right,
was a
Abs.
chunk.
So should we do a wrap up spiel?
Yeah. Well, let's reconnect when you get back from Mexico then. See
Yeah, I
where
should
your
probably
how your re-entry is.
go check in with the fam.
Cool. All right, good to talk.
All right, love you.
All
Talk
right,
soon.
love you. Bye.
Bye.